Hey friend, if you could hit that subscribe button, it'd mean the world to me, even if it only takes you a second. An hour after I clicked not attending on the RSVP, my phone buzzed with a text. Hey man, everything alright? It was Adam, my younger brother. The same brother who was about to get married. The same one who decided my son, well my stepson, wasn't worthy of attending his picture-perfect adults-only celebration. I'm Tom Becker. I'm 47, and I teach history at a public high school in Kingston, New York. I've been raising Ryan since he was 5. He's 17 now. I was at the kitchen counter when the invitation arrived. It wasn't your typical invite. It was classy, expensive. Thick cardstock, gold foil edging, and a wax seal that made it feel like some royal decree. I used a knife to open it. There it was. Adults only, 21 and up. No exceptions. Ryan was lounging on the couch nearby, sketchpad in his lap, lost in another t-shirt logo design for his dream clothing brand. I read the line out loud without thinking. He paused, eyes lifting from his sketch. So, I'm not invited. I didn't try to soften it. It's adults only. He gave a slight nod and looked back at his design. But I saw it, the subtle shift in his expression. Not surprise. Something quieter. Like it confirmed what he already believed. I didn't push the conversation. Didn't call Adam. Didn't bring it up with our parents. I just went back to my laptop, clicked the not attending box and shut the lid. That should have been the end of it. But then Adam's text lit up my phone. Hey man, everything alright? I stared at the message. Classic Adam. Acting like everything's fine, like this wasn't personal. Even though it absolutely was. I typed my reply. Ryan wasn't invited. I'm not going without him. His response came back within seconds. Oh right. Sorry if that seemed harsh. We're just trying to keep everything consistent. 21 and up across the board. I could hear his voice in my head. Cool, polished, effortlessly dismissive. But I knew what was really going on. It wasn't about consistency. It was about exclusion. Ryan wasn't welcome. Not in the photos, not in the toasts, not at the table. And I'd finally stopped pretending otherwise. I flipped my phone over on the counter, screen down, and walked back to the living room. Ryan was still sketching. I sat beside him. What do you think of this one? He asked, holding up the pad. The logo was clean, modern. A bold circle enclosing the phrase first draft. Smiled. Looks like you already own a brand. I shrugged. Maybe I'll tweak the font. And just like that we settled back into our rhythm. No arguing. No explanation. No drama. Ryan had long since learned not to expect invites. And I had finally figured out what it meant to truly support him. Not by dragging him through doors that wouldn't open, but by standing beside him when they slammed shut. Ryan's always been quiet. Not timid, just observant. The kind of kid who stays on the edges, sketching the world instead of stepping into its chaos. Maybe he was always like that. Or maybe it started after his biological dad walked out. But from the day I met him, that's how he's been around me. The first time he accidentally called me Dad was during one of those goofy cooking shows we liked watching. He pointed at a contestant and said, "He burns stuff like you do, Dad." Then he froze, his eyes wide with panic. "Sorry," he muttered. My heart cracked wide open. "It's okay," I said gently. "You can call me whatever feels right." He nodded, went back to eating popcorn and never brought it up again. But from that day forward the word stuck. To my family though, Ryan was never truly mine. My mother never once called him her grandson. It was always Tom's stepson, like a footnote or a technical disclaimer. And it wasn't just her. Every family gathering, every holiday, it was the same. The other kids, the real grandkids, got hugs and jokes and candy. Ryan got polite smiles and awkward greetings. One Easter about 5 years ago, my sister Carla hosted a big egg hunt in her backyard. Every child had a customized basket, decked out with ribbons and their names in big cheerful letters. Except Ryan's. His was different. No name, no ribbon. Just a plain basket with a generic Happy Spring tag. Noticed. So did he. But he didn't say a word. He just smiled that same patient smile he always wore and joined in like it didn't matter. Later in the car I asked if he was okay. Yeah. It's just a basket, he said. But it wasn't. It was one of 1,000 quiet reminders. Then there was the drawing. He was 12. Spent an entire week sketching a beautiful portrait of our family. Me, Beth, him, and our dog Max. He framed it himself and gave it to my mom for Christmas. She smiled, said, "Oh, how nice," and placed it on the side table. She never hung it. Never asked about it. Never said another word. Years later, I found it in the hallway closet, buried under wrapping paper and unused ribbons. I never told Ryan I saw it. And I wish I could say I did more for him. That I fought for him every time. But the truth is, I didn't. I kept hoping if I kept bringing him along, to birthdays, holidays, dinners, they'd eventually see what I saw. That he was my son. But they never did. And slowly, I watched Ryan begin to disappear. Not physically, but piece by piece. He stopped cracking jokes at dinner. Stopped asking to bring his sketchbook. Stopped trying. I didn't even notice it right away. Then one night at dinner someone asked him how school was. He didn't even lift his head. Just said, "Fine," and went back to his food. That's when I realized. He wasn't angry. He was used to it. He had grown used to being overlooked. He'd figured out that silence was safer than hope. That stung the most. Not their behavior, but how good he'd become at pretending it didn't matter. I should have stopped bringing him to those gatherings. I should have stopped defending people who never saw him for who he was. But instead I waited. Hope. And while I was busy hoping, Ryan was learning how to fade into the background on his own. The morning after I declined the wedding invitation, Adam messaged me like everything was normal. "Hope you understand, man. Just trying to keep things consistent. Nothing personal. Consistent." That was the word he chose. Not thoughtful. Not kind. Just consistent. I stared at that text, waiting for something more. Maybe an apology, a second thought, any sign he'd realized what this meant. But nothing else followed. A few hours later the family group chat started buzzing. Carla. Seriously? All this over one rule? Mom. It's just one night, Tom. Don't take it out on Adam. Take it out. That's how they saw it. Like I was punishing Adam. Like I was holding something over his head. Not standing up for Ryan, not protecting my son. Typed one reply. Just one. Ryan wasn't invited. I'm not going without him. The conversation went still. I could feel the discomfort seeping through the screen. Then, finally, my mother chimed in. Mom, he's family. 2 words. As if that erased everything. As if saying it now fixed what they'd refused to acknowledge all these years. But if he were family, his name would have been on the invite. If he mattered to them, no one would have had to question his place. If he were family, I wouldn't be the only one who noticed how often he was overlooked. Excuses came flooding in like a rehearsed chorus. He's nearly 18, Tom. It's just one day. We can't bend the rules for everyone. They weren't trying to include him. They just didn't want conflict. They wanted smooth surfaces, even if it meant stepping over Ryan to get there. Not a single person asked how Ryan felt. No one checked in with Beth. No one admitted they'd made a mistake, because acknowledging that would mean admitting there had been a problem all along. Instead, they painted me as the troublemaker. The one overreacting. The one stirring things up. They didn't want their pretty celebration marred by a kid they never fully welcomed. But this wasn't about the wedding. This had been building for years. The Easter basket without a name. The drawing that ended up in a closet. The stiff smiles and hollow greetings. And now a wedding where he didn't meet their definition of included. For the first time I saw it clearly. I had spent years waiting. Hoping they'd come to see Ryan the way I saw him. Someone worth showing up for. But they only saw rules I was breaking, comfort I was disturbing. In their story I became the villain. Not Adam who made the list. Not Carla, who dismissed me. Not my mom, who pretended this wasn't a pattern. Me for saying no. For standing still when they wanted me to step aside. So I silenced the chat. Let them argue with each other. I was done explaining. I was choosing my son. And if that meant they saw me as the problem, so be it. For a decade, Christmas had always been at our place. Like clockwork, I'd drag out the folding chairs from the basement. I bought both kinds of cider. Mom liked hers warm, Carla liked hers cold. I stocked the fridge with Adam's favorite beer, even though he barely touched it. I cooked the roast. Beth baked her bourbon pecan pie. Ryan would hang lights on the porch, grumbling like he hated it but never missing a corner. Every year they all came. Every year, Ryan stood slightly to the side, smiling without fully being seen. But this year I didn't lift a finger. No email thread. No group text about who's bringing what. No Costco run. No fridge cleared for leftovers. I didn't make an announcement. I just didn't start the tradition. And Beth didn't ask. She understood. Ryan didn't say anything either. He just noticed the chairs were still in the basement. By mid-December the text started rolling in. Carla. What should I bring for dinner? Adam. We'll be 5. Let us know what Ryan wants. That one nearly broke me. Let us know what Ryan wants. As if he were a side dish. As if this was some thoughtful gesture. Not a decade too late. I said nothing. A few days later, my dad left a voicemail. Tom, it's not too late to do the right thing. The right thing. Like I had lost my way and they held the compass. So I let silence be my answer. No tree in the window. No wreath on the door. No last-minute parking instructions for a dozen cousins. I didn't host. And no one else stepped up either. That silence. It said more than any message ever could. On Christmas morning, Beth and I slept in. Ryan made the coffee. We stayed in our pajamas until noon. No knocks at the door. No phone calls asking if dinner was still happening. 'Cause they knew. Deep down they all knew. They just didn't want to say it out loud. They'd spent years telling me to keep the peace, to not make a fuss, to stop making it about Ryan. But this time I didn't invite them in. And the quiet that followed. It wasn't bitter. It was truthful. For the first time the noise stopped. The fake smiles, the forced conversations, the endless pretending. It all went still. And in that stillness, something unexpected appeared. Not the kind wrapped in tinsel and paper napkins. Not the kind born from polished dinners and seasonal cheer. Real peace. The kind that settles in when you stop denying the harm that's been done. The kind that only comes when you stop making space for people who refuse to see your child. I didn't need apologies. I needed boundaries. And that Christmas, for the first time, I gave myself room to breathe. Christmas arrived quietly that year, and for the first time in ages, it was just the 3 of us. Beth, Ryan, and me. No guests dropping off strange casseroles. No background buzz of forced conversation. No chaos. Just us. Ryan rolled out of bed late. His hair sticking up like he'd been in a wind tunnel. Beth never changed out of her flannel pajama pants and fuzzy socks. I didn't bother shaving. Breakfast wasn't a grand production. It was mugs of coffee, cold slices of lasagna, and sugar cookies shaped like snow boots and big-headed cartoon birds. Ryan had crafted the cookie cutters himself using flimsy strips of aluminum and a glue gun. They were wobbly and awkward, and we couldn't stop laughing. We actually had to pause decorating them just to catch our breath between fits of laughter. Beth gave every cookie a pair of googly eyes, even the ones that didn't need them. Ryan joked that now they all felt seen. There were no awkward silences. No whispered jabs about my parenting. No tight, uncomfortable hugs from people pretending to get along. Just comfort. Just ease. That afternoon, we threw on one of those ridiculous action movies. The kind that explodes every 5 seconds and forgets about logic halfway through. Ryan kept spotting plot holes and continuity errors like he was auditioning to be the director's commentary. Eventually we pulled out the poker set and bet jelly beans. Ryan wiped the floor with us. Every time he won. He made us hand over the beans one by one while he hummed the Jeopardy theme like a dramatic overlord. Beth called him a dictator. He stood and bowed like some theatrical villain. And then, as we were brushing the last cookie crumbs off the coffee table, Ryan looked around the room and said, plain and certain, "This is the best Christmas I've ever had." He didn't offer it as a compliment. He said it like a fact. And I didn't have words. I didn't need any. I looked at Beth. She looked back at me, her eyes soft, just barely glistening. Her smile wasn't the kind you give for the sake of the holiday. It was quiet and full and real. The kind that says, "This is right." There were no mountains of gifts under the tree. No matching pajamas, no orchestrated photo ops. But there was something more important, something still and simple. A calm kind of joy that doesn't need a filter or a post. Peace you don't explain. You just feel it. And in that moment, I realized I didn't miss the noise. Not even a little. Maybe I never liked it to begin with. Maybe I was only pretending because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Later that night, Ryan vanished into his room and returned holding a sketch he'd drawn earlier that day. It was us, sitting on the couch laughing. Beth with her head tossed back mid-laugh. Me holding a steaming mug. Ryan surrounded by a mountain of jelly beans. He handed it to me. "Merry Christmas," he said. I didn't frame it. Not yet. I placed it right on the mantel. Right where we'd see it every time we passed through the room. Because sometimes, joy doesn't need to be sealed behind glass. Sometimes it just needs to be seen. And this time we all saw it. A few days after Christmas, the snow still hadn't stopped. The backyard looked like it had been sifted with powdered sugar. Ryan was lying half on the floor, half propped up, sketchpad balanced on his knee. I sat on the couch folding laundry, making neat towers of towels while ignoring the buzzing phone I still hadn't answered. Without looking up, he asked, "Do you think they'd like me more if I were actually your kid?" It hit like a gut punch I never saw coming. My hands froze mid-fold around a towel. I turned to look at him. He hadn't looked away from his drawing. He said it like it was nothing, like it was just a thought that drifted in. But it wasn't. I slowly sat down, this time with no rush to reply. How do you respond to something like that? I wanted to say, no way. Course not. That's ridiculous. But that would have been a lie. So I told him the truth. Maybe they would have pretended better, I said quietly. But their problem isn't you. He nodded just a little. Like he already knew. Like he just needed to hear me say it. I don't think I want them to like me anymore, he added. He didn't say it out of anger. There was no bitterness, no resentment, just calm clarity. Like someone who had stood at a locked door long enough to realize it was never going to open. Not for him. I wanted to pull him into a hug. I wanted to undo the years. But he wasn't looking for comfort. He was giving me truth. He wasn't broken. He wasn't even sad. He had simply let go. And I realized, sitting there beside him, that he'd made peace with that reality long before I had. He wasn't waiting for an apology. He was freeing himself. And for the first time I saw it. He didn't need me to protect him anymore. He had figured it out on his own. It was me who had been holding on. I was the one still hoping they'd change. That one day they'd wake up and see him the way I always had. But Ryan had moved on. He wasn't looking back. He had left the room long ago, and all I could do now was catch up. Just after New Year's, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. "Your mother's not sleeping. You've cut us off. This isn't like you." I stared at those words for a long time. This isn't like you. I'd heard that phrase all my life. Whenever I dared to speak up. Whenever I challenged their comfort. Whenever I stopped playing nice. But what they really meant was, this isn't the version of you we're used to. The version who kept the peace. The version who kept quiet. The version who still showed up, even when his son was left out, even when the smiles at the dinner table skipped over the boy beside him. I didn't reply. Later that night, a voice message from Adam came through. I knew it was a voice message before I even pressed play. Adam always reserved the big, emotional stuff for recordings. Less chance of being misinterpreted that way. His voice came through calm, polished, like he'd rehearsed it. Tom, it's tough seeing you go this route. You always made everything about Ryan. I get that you care, but now it feels like you're using him to prove a point. That's not healthy. You have to move on. I didn't finish listening. I erased it mid-sentence. Blocked his number. I couldn't have his voice echoing through my house anymore. Not now. Because what none of them seemed to grasp was this. Loving Ryan wasn't a strategy. It wasn't part of some fight for attention or a way to prove anyone wrong. It was just love. The kind that shows up. Again and again. Until the person you love stops wondering if you ever will. The kind that shields a child who never asked to be defended but learned too early not to expect it. To them it looked like obsession. They called it drama. They saw the boundaries I drew as personal attacks. But real love, the kind that holds people accountable, the kind that doesn't bend to keep others comfortable, makes people squirm. They wanted me to smooth it all over. Keep the peace. But peace that asks you to abandon your child isn't peace. It's surrender. And I wasn't doing that anymore. So I let the silence stay. I didn't send thank you texts. I ignored the guilt trips disguised as "we miss your energy" voicemails. I stopped tiptoeing around what they refused to say. I let the quiet speak in my place. It said, "You drew the line." And I just stopped pretending it wasn't there. If my kid isn't welcome, neither am I. I won't keep returning to a table where he was never offered a seat. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel bad about it. I felt like a parent. New Year's Eve came and went without much noise. No fireworks. No family check-ins. No countdown calls. Just the three of us. Beth made a simple dinner. Pasta drenched in garlic, and garlic bread that somehow had even more. Ryan took one bite and declared it criminally aggressive. We all cracked up like it was the funniest thing we'd ever heard. Midnight came and went without notice. It wasn't until Beth glanced at the microwave and said, "Well, Happy New Year," that we even realized what time it was. We were too busy trying to figure out the new board game Ryan had unwrapped at Christmas. Some weird, glitchy indie card game. The rules contradicted each other. The cards were misprinted. But we played anyway. We couldn't stop laughing every time someone tried to make sense of a card that read, "Draw 2 unless you roll a 5, which undoes the last action, unless your socks match." Ryan called it chaos in a box. We stayed on the floor playing for hours. No pressure to make it magical. No choreographed joy. Just the kind of laughter that doesn't need to be remembered with photos. Around 11, Beth opened a bottle of sparkling apple cider. We didn't have clean glasses, so we used whatever mugs we had left in the cupboard. We clinked them together. "To zero expectations," I said. "To rules that actually make sense," Ryan added. Beth raised her mug with a smirk. "To chaos in a box." We drank and something clicked inside me. A quiet realization I hadn't let myself believe before then. I didn't miss it. Not the countdown parties. Not the family selfies. Not the group messages from people who never really saw Ryan, until it was time to sign a card. I didn't check my phone once. Not because I was being dramatic, but because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology dressed up as a resolution. I wasn't hoping they'd suddenly get it. I was done shrinking our happiness to fit inside their version of family. This was the new rule for the new year. No one defines our family but us. And if that means the table is smaller, so be it. Because the seats that remain, the ones that never left, those are the only ones that matter. About a week into January, I opened the fridge to grab some milk and stopped in my tracks. Taped to the freezer door was one of Ryan's sketches. It was us. Just the three of us sitting around the kitchen table, still in our pajamas. Beth mid-laugh, rolling her eyes. Me holding a chipped mug that read, "World's okayest dad." Ryan had a hoodie halfway off, a jelly bean in his mouth, and this goofy, unapologetic grin on his face. At the top, in thick, uneven block letters, he'd written one word. Family. No fine print. No footnote. No step or technically or kind of. Just family. I stood there, hand still on the fridge handle, staring at it. It was so simple. So quiet. But it hit harder than every awkward conversation, every unspoken insult, every cold shoulder we'd ever been dealt. For years I had tried to build a bridge. We went to birthdays, showed up at holidays, clapped at weddings. Always crossing over. Hoping one day they'd meet us in the middle. But they never did. And now, staring at that sketch, I saw what I'd missed. I shouldn't have been looking out there. I should have been looking right here. At this table. This house. At this kid, who had every reason not to believe in love but did anyway. We weren't missing a thing. We were just done pretending. No more begging to be seen. No more hoping someone would finally understand. No more handing out invitations to people who never showed up. This was it. This was our family. And it was enough. I didn't frame the drawing. Didn't laminate it or try to preserve it like some precious relic. I left it right there on the fridge, wedged between a wrinkled pizza coupon and a reminder to buy more oat milk. Because that's where real love lives. Not in perfect pictures, but in the messy, ordinary corners of life. And for the first time in a long time we weren't reaching anymore. We were already home.